And so you said, you started, but way back in Ultima Online, you started doing this, and coming back to the now, how's the perceptions of those type of transactions shifted from back then when there wasn't a lot of farming going on to now when, you could go.
Well, back then, one of the common ways that we got items was from people who had more time to play, and they would sell us these items, and it was a fair exchange, and then we'd turn around and sell them to people who typically were professionals or didn't have as much time to play as they would like, and so they could, they enjoyed buying the gold pieces so they could go buy some better armor instead of working their way up to it. These games do require that you have a profession.
Yeah.
All of them make you work for a living.
Yeah.
And some people just buy their livings in the game. And it's, I don't see anything wrong with that. Nowadays, though, it really has a bad rap because of the farming and everything. So, I don't think it's changed much, except it's become more commercialized, and some of the people who are doing it for commercial purposes don't have good ethics and morals, and so they do it to the detriment of the game. I guess it could be like somebody who maims themselves for a living.
Yeah.
You can only do that so long before you're disabled or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, and so like you said, one of the major pulls of these games is the community, the large community, and you make a lot of friends, and there's a lot of emotional aspects in that game. So what are the major advancements you've seen of how these games treat their community, how they give tools to the community to build, and what major advancements have you seen since the days of Ultima Online in just the community aspects of these games?
So, in the beginning, there was no such thing as community, and you just have groups of people in the game, and when you'd be able to talk to each other, text would appear above your head, and it was just people who were within a certain radius of you could see that. Nowadays, you've got chat groups and everything within the games, or even voice in the games, and you join these different rooms, and that is one big difference. Another thing is like guilds and everything, to where you could signify that you're a group. Nowadays, you have your guild title up there and everything, and it lists not only your guild but sometimes your rank as well. In the early days, there was no such thing as guilds, and I remember that I ran a guild. We called ourselves a guild in the game, and probably in the first year of UO, I ran this guild, and we didn't really have a formal name, we just called ourselves the Anti-PK Guild. And PK standing for player killers, and we were against the player killers, and so all of us, having been killed by these other people before, decided that there was safety in numbers, and we would all work together to kill these people who went out against the innocent. And back then, there was no way to signify that you were part of this group with a title or anything like that. So we all wore the same color robes and capes and shoes. And so that anytime someone saw this combination, they knew that we were part of this guild. And what happened was a lot of people just didn't mess with us anymore because they knew that we would call our friends, and then we would all come in and take care of them.
Yeah, and I mean the community aspect, I would say, is your expertise when it comes to these games. I mean, you run a huge community online.
Well, there are huge communities outside of the game, bigger than what's inside the game. And I would say that we've got a huge community on our site. We have, I don't know, I think it's between 13 and 15,000 visitors a day to our forums, and that's they're all talking about whatever game, and they're talking about stuff that's actually not allowed to be talked about in the game itself.
So are there any community advancements you'd like to see in future games? Any that you're looking forward to that you've heard about?
You know, I've never really thought about it that way. Community is a very organic thing.
Mm-hmm.
It takes on a life of its own, whether it was intended or not. And even if they don't put the tools in the game, the community will still form.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still communicate via other means. Back in the old days, community was ICQ,
Mm-hmm.
and we would all use ICQ to chat with one another and everything. We might sometimes use different forums and stuff. Nowadays, there's a whole bunch of instant messaging programs and a whole bunch of voice programs, and there's forums and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it is now, but I really don't know where it's going. It's going to go wherever the community wants it to go,
Right.
because it's not something that even the game companies have control over. They can try and make it easier for them
Mm-hmm.
and more intuitive, but gosh, it'll just be the next big thing. We won't necessarily know it until we're there.
Okay.
So
All right. So you'd say that there's a balance that can't necessarily be forced with community and against.
well, yeah, it can't be forced, because if you try and force it into a single direction in the game, what'll happen is if people don't feel like that's the right way to go, they'll just communicate outside of that channel and form their own communities on the outside.
Mhm.
The communities are going to form on the outside anyway,
Mhm.
but they'll just be more heavily used out there.
Mhm.
So they'll use Ventrello instead of the in-game,
Yeah.
voice stuff and everything.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is all the questions I had for you. Thank you very much. It's been a big help.
Thank you, John.
No problem.